second session of the day, which is a very special session with Dr. Vijay Kumar Saraswat, member Niti Aayog and Chancellor JNU. This session is on policies, plans, and strategies for promoting green hydrogen. Dr. Saraswat, I'll just take 1 minute to introduce you, and then we can move on to your remarks, sir.
Very brief introduction. Don't make it too long.
All right, sir. Sure. I'll just give a very brief introduction. Dr. Saraswat is a scientist with vast experience in defense research in both basic and applied sciences. During his career, he's been credited with indigenous development of missiles. And in his current role, he has initiated a program to develop methanol economy for transportation, energy generation, and production of chemicals, fertilizers. He's also served as Secretary DRDO and as Chairman NTPC R&D Advisory Council. He has an ME from IISc Bangalore and a PhD from Osmania University. A very, very warm welcome to you, sir, and thank you for taking time out for this conference. We'll have remarks from you, and then we'll have a questions and answers session with me as well as our delegates. So without wasting any time, sir, we would like to hear from you now.
Thank you very much for the brief introduction. I heard the views from Mr. Manas Majumdar. One of the major things today that has happened on the policy front as far as hydrogen economy or hydrogen mission is concerned, after the announcement of National Green Hydrogen Mission by the Prime Minister of India during the 15th August speech, it has become imperative on our part to start looking at what are the ways and means of achieving that mission. Now, hydrogen mission has got three major elements, all of you know. It's with respect to how the hydrogen is produced, how the hydrogen is stored, how the hydrogen is transported, and how the demand for hydrogen can be increased. Because as on today, if you look at it, we have almost about 1.2 to 1.6 million tons of hydrogen which is getting consumed in various areas like fertilizer, refineries, and the various other activities. So in that, if you look at it, if you want to increase the demand by penetrating hydrogen in those areas where it is being manufactured using the conventional processes, which as on today are not very carbon friendly. They are actually like whether it's the steam methane reforming or it is coal-based plants, all of them, since they do not have the required measures for sequestrating or using carbon dioxide, so they fall in the category of the gray hydrogen. Now, in that gray hydrogen process, we are not decarbonizing, which is one of the major requirements today for going on reaching towards the clean hydrogen. But the issue is whether we are ready for directly jumping to the green hydrogen today. Because if you go for green hydrogen, if you go by the numbers as they are today, we will notice that the cost involved and the kind of numbers which are there for the ultimate cost of hydrogen to the customer. In India, it is in the region of 350 to 500 rupees a kg. Universally, it is coming that the hydrogen at the 2018-19 figure was about $13 to $16 per kg. That is the numbers. And of course, people are now stipulating that it will come down to something like $3 to $7 per kg by the end of maybe 2030. But 2030 till now, we have 8 years to go. And in India, where the kind of work which is going on in achieving the green hydrogen and green hydrogen using the electrolysis of water requires significant amount of investment on the electrolyzers and also the energy. Even for electrolyzers, you need energy. Now, if your energy is not green energy, that means you use only the renewables, then you run into problem. There is a very strong stipulation that unless 90% of the grid becomes decarbonized, then only we will be able to match the cost of hydrogen, green hydrogen, with that of the blue hydrogen or the gray hydrogen. So I think what Manas was mentioning, I think that's a very great and important strategy for us, that we have to introduce, and I have been propagating this view for many months, probably a year, more than a year, that our journey to green hydrogen has to be through the blue hydrogen. That means the kind of plants which we have today where hydrogen is being produced, whether it's for fertilizer or steel or refineries or wherever it is, I think we need to make sure that they are fitted with carbon capture and storage object utilization kind of facility. That will reduce the carbon dioxide emissions and we'll reach certain level of commitments what we have made for in the COP summits and things like that. That is one immediate task which we can do. On the second part, it becomes important for us to start looking at how do you bring down the cost of electrolyzers. As all of you know today, India is not producing electrolyzers in our country. We are dependent on import. And imported prices vary from China to America in a vast manner, while the Chinese electrolyzers are ranging from $400 to maybe $1,000. The European and American electrolyzers are costing anything between $500 to $1,500. That is a kind of, the price disparity between China and the rest of the world are almost a question which we are not able to answer in detail. However, in both cases, our dependence is more on import at the moment. So one strategy, if you really want to go to the green hydrogen, is to make policy measures by which investment in the production and development of electrolyzers indigenously is done. Unlike what we have done in the case of solar energy and lithium-ion battery, that we have gone into their application in a big way, but we have not paid major attention on setting up the required infrastructure for their production. I would not like personally to jump to the green without setting up a huge infrastructure in the country for electrolyzers. So on the policy front for that, it becomes imperative that we introduce schemes like PLI, we introduce schemes like investment subsidies for setting up such large plants for electrolyzers and so on. And I'm very happy that some of the corporate houses in the country have made some announcements now that they will be investing a huge amount of money for overcoming this problem. So this is one major aspect of it. Second part is we have to make our grid also green. That means renewable energy is being used more and more. As on today, our penetration is to the extent of about 10 to 15%. Now, if the International Energy Agency's data is taken into account, that unless 90% grid is decarbonized, you will not be able to match the goal of green hydrogen. And they also mentioned that whether you carry on with this or not, the way the ramping up is going on, it will be important for us to assume that by 2050 also, the distribution between the blue hydrogen and the green hydrogen will be in the ratio of 43% and the 47%. This is what the stipulation again of the International Energy Agency is there. So it becomes again imperative that our investment policy should drive this whole thing in that direction, that we should have a policy for carbon capture utilization to decarbonize the grid. We should also have a policy for augmenting the production of electrolyzers and associated equipment which are required for that. And third one, we should also look for what is our base load for renewable energy. Now we have two options. In the base load, if we continue to go for what we have identified as batteries or lithium-ion batteries, while it could serve the purpose and it could give you some relief with respect to the carbon dioxide emissions, but you will also notice that lithium as per se, our dependence is again on the foreign imports. India does not have much of the lithium resources. So even though we might set up tomorrow a lithium cell plant, lithium-ion cell plant, we still depend upon import of lithium in a big way. And lithium reserves across the world are also limited reserves. So it cannot be a continued support system. In my opinion, besides in a short-term measure, go for the lithium-ion battery at the base load, we should look at our nuclear energy as one of the major sources for meeting the base load, because that is the only source which is clean, carbon neutral, carbon free, and that will be able to meet the requirement. India's program has been significantly moving ahead, and I think we should give a major push for providing, as a part of the national green hydrogen mission, the nuclear base load requirement of energy, that also should be given a major push. Now coming to the issues of storage and transportation, I think we will understand that hydrogen is certainly not a device to provide electricity, because by electrolyzing and producing hydrogen, and hydrogen for producing electricity is not a very efficient system. Hydrogen is a carrier of energy. So we have to see fuel cells which are required for converting hydrogen into electricity, and they will be mostly for the mobility applications. But when it comes down to power generation, I think we have to start looking at other systems also. So that is one part. Then in the mobility sector, if the hydrogen goes into, the distribution and storage becomes a major issue. That is one part. So what should we do? Whether we should for liquefied hydrogen storage, or we should go for gas-based hydrogen storage. If we go for gas-based hydrogen storage, we need to go for tube trailers, high pressure compressors, and none of these things as on today are available in the country. By the way, we don't have hydrogen compressors. In fact, there are only 4 companies in the world who are manufacturing hydrogen compressors. So if I have to pressurize hydrogen to 700 bars, I need a huge amount of investment to set up compressors wherever the hydrogen dispensation system is required. That is one possibility. If you want to go for liquefaction, again, it is not a very energy saving device. Liquefaction and deliquefaction causes huge loss of energy. So we need to again look at that. So the storage devices, dispensation devices, and transportation devices, that becomes another factor. The impact of this storage and transportation is, while the production cost could be $3 to $4 per kg, by the time it goes to the customer, this cost goes to as high as 11 to 12 dollars. So the investments and the costs which are added on due to the transportation and storage, they become significantly high. So this becomes very important. My opinion is that in India, we should make a major difference as far as our strategy is concerned. While our aim is to go for green hydrogen in a big way, we should look at the likely costs which are going to happen of green hydrogen available with whatever efforts we make. And this was again a data which I collected from International Energy Agency and some of the analysis which has been done. Current cost of hydrogen is up in the region of about $16. By 2025, it is supposed to come to about $7. By 2030, it will be about $4.55, and only by about 2050, it will reach about $4 or so. So that is the kind of dispensed renewable hydrogen cost which will be there. So it becomes important that we should look at how to reduce this cost. That is one. Impact of immediately using green hydrogen into production of fertilizers or into production of in the refineries is so high that suppose you, or steel for that matter, suppose today you introduce green hydrogen in the Rashtriya Chemicals and Fertilizer, which is producing ammonia using the steel methane reforming at the cost of something like $375 per ton. This becomes immediately about $870 per ton. So this is the kind of impact it will have on the fertilizer cost. Similarly, it has been seen by all people, I think KPMG report also is there on this, that if you want to introduce hydrogen as in today, with the today's cost into the steel sector, even 10% penetration, it will have 10 to 20% impact on the cost of steel. In a very competitive market of steel and fertilizers that too we are subsidizing significantly, we cannot afford to do that. So we have to find ways and means by which we increase the demand so that investment on the supply side are also done. And that is the way we should do through the what we call as the blue hydrogen measures. And for that, we should set out a very robust policy on carbon capture, utilization, and storage. And in fact, there are companies which have come today which are saying that for every ton of carbon dioxide capture, you need only about $30. That means incremental cost for doing the job is not going to be significant. Second thing is the two major carriers of hydrogen are ammonia and methanol. I think we should work out our mechanism, Sanjay, that these two chemicals are produced using the blue hydrogen for promoting the transportation of the hydrogen in various sectors. Third one, there is a major issue being talked about, export of hydrogen, green hydrogen. It's a good idea, but you should understand that if you have to export green hydrogen, you will be using a huge amount of fresh water for electrolysis. And India is a depleted country as far as the fresh water is concerned. I think you are aware of the fact that we have 16% of the global population and we have only 4% of the resources, be freshwater resources. So if you are dependent on fresh water for producing green hydrogen, you are likely to be water stressed nation already, and that stress will continue to increase. And if you have exported hydrogen by burning hydrogen in India, it will remain in Australia or Japan or someplace. It will not come to India. So you are not likely to recoup your water resources. So we have to look at that. That means the technology has to go into the direction of saline or the seawater electrolysis, and that should be our major. I personally believe and strongly feel that policy should be in terms of supporting the green hydrogen technology through R&D in a big way, bringing investment on the supply side on the electrolyzers and the fuel cells, and trying to reach as much self-reliance as possible, maybe through collaborations, maybe through investment from outside. But I think our supply chain dependence should be minimized as much as possible, and work on a robust baseload strategy for energy production, whether it is nuclear or the battery base. But I would strongly recommend that we should put our nuclear in the private sector by bringing what we call as a small modular reactors, which can replace the thermal power plants what we have today, which are aged already and which are also polluting, by bringing SMRs for producing energy and integrating with our green hydrogen mission. I stop here, and I think we can have more questions, discussions. I can, in fact, I had a presentation, but I did not use that. But we can work on that. And if you want, I can send it to you anytime.
Yes, sir. I think our delegates would like that very much if you could send us the presentation. But so your remarks were very interesting and very informative. And there are so many questions from the delegates, so I'll quickly move on to those. So the first one is that obviously there's a lot of interest around the National Hydrogen Mission, and a lot of delegates want to know that when is it expected to be formally released, and when are the details, more details expected?
As far as the document on the National Hydrogen Mission is concerned, the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, MNRE, has already circulated the document for National Mission on Green Hydrogen. It is into the interdepartmental consultations, and I'm sure within about 3 to 4 months' time, it will get the approval of the government, and then we will have it rolling out. So that is the present status of the activity as far as rolling out a policy document on the National Hydrogen Mission. Actually, I want to call it hydrogen is a colorless as far as I'm concerned. I don't want to attach any color to it. But unfortunately, we have got into this green, blue, yellow, and all that. Hydrogen for decarbonization, that is our protein.
Right. Actually, sir, there was a question regarding the color of hydrogen only, and the question is that the National Hydrogen Mission is focusing primarily on green hydrogen. Mr. Matthew John wants to know. So, is there any policy which is coming up which supports CCS or blue hydrogen as well?
As on today, in the draft document, there has not been much of description as far as the CCS and CCU are concerned. But personally, we are looking at coming out with some initiative on bringing out a policy on encouraging the carbon capture, utilization, oblique storage. And shortly, we will be circulating the document because there is a good amount of work going on in India to come out with that kind of thing, because we know that it's the bridge towards green hydrogen. So we have to support that. And I think somebody asked Mr. Manas the question, what happens to steam methane reforming units which are already there in fertilizer plants or steel plants and all that? It's a very valid question. I think we have to put CCU there and make it work for the time of the life of the plant.
So, one of actually 2-3 delegates have said that the volume is a little low, so maybe you can speak a little bit louder, sir.
Okay, no problem.
And sir, there's a question from Mr. Bharat Parekh, who wants to know that will there be a public consultation before this document is, officially released?
Yeah, I think there will be a discussion. There will be a discussion at various platforms with the industry and with the other NGOs on this particular aspect. Certainly, there will be a discourse.
All right. And are there any policies coming up to promote small modular nuclear reactors as well, or is it going to be mostly, larger?
See, we are working today on participation of the private sector in the nuclear energy area. And one of the area which Niti Aayog is promoting is on participation of private sector in factory assembled, factory manufactured SMRs. And we are discussing with the Department of Atomic Energy as to how this action can be initiated. But then you know we have our atomic energy regulatory policy document. So there will be certain clauses in that document that have to be modified because nuclear energy has got two connotations. One is peaceful and the non-peaceful. So when it comes down to non-peaceful, we have to take safeguard certain things when it is allowed to go into the private sector. And the major thing becomes is what do you do with the nuclear waste? Who is going to be responsible? So all these issues are being discussed today, and shortly, I think there will be again a paper on how to bring SMRs in the private sector. But certainly, it will be a combination of the large plants, which are PWHR and so on, pressurized heavy water reactors, which is in India, which is going on in a big way, and India has become quite self-sufficient in that area, and the SMRs together.
And so, what is your forecast for green hydrogen production in India?
I personally believe that there will be a number of people who are going to come up already. For example, a company called Acme is setting up a plant in Bikaner, and looking at that, there's another company which recently came up, which is trying to set up a blue hydrogen plant, and Reliance has also announced a huge investment. So I think it will be coming into thousands of tons, I must say. That is the kind of numbers which will come in. But the time period is the issue. It may go up to about 2030. I don't think it will happen in 2023 or 25 because
Hmm.
cycle time for doing this kind of activity is significantly large.
Right. And so, if there's a question from Mr. Bharat Parekh who wants to know if steel price can go up to $400 per ton in last 1 year by profiteering, why can't why can't $130 per ton emission control cost be absorbed for H2 at the peak price cycle?
I won't like to comment on profiteering part because that becomes sensitive. But the important thing is that yes, already there are efforts to start blending certain percentage of hydrogen in the blast furnaces, and also there is a certain percentage of even in the direct reduction of the steel in the electric arc furnaces using the hydrogen. So this activity is already on, and unfortunately in India there is not much work going on in this. But countries like Sweden and other Germany and other places, there are plants which are already started introducing hydrogen, and they're experimented onto the cost effectiveness of that. Based on that only I mentioned that unless the hydrogen cost comes down to $2 to the customers per kg, the impact on the steel prices will be more than about 10 to 20%. So that becomes a problem, and it has nothing to do with profiteering because it is again the global steel prices which are going to dictate at what cost India can sell its steel. So you have to understand that.
Right. So there was an interesting question from Mr. Desai that electrolysis for green hydrogen production would need ultra pure water. So how would the projections for green hydrogen production affect the water supply scenario in India, considering that there are, water scarcity issues in many
Yeah, I
regions?
mentioned that in my opening remarks. This is one of the major issue because for 1 kg of green hydrogen, you need about 18 liters or 18 kgs of water. And this water has to be ultra pure water. It cannot be just the tap water also. So you need to have ion exchange methods and demineralization and mineralized water and demineralized water and so on, which also adds to the cost. And in addition to the energy cost, the water cost is also important. And as I mentioned to you, because one of the objectives in the National Hydrogen Mission has been put at exporting hydrogen. And if exporting hydrogen, that means you're also exporting your water. So that is the kind of situation I'm talking about. And that's why our focus should be on doing accelerated R&D on using on using saline water or the seawater for electrolysis. That is going to mitigate this problem as far as India is concerned. I can assure you that in various laboratories in India, today significant amount of work is going on in achieving the electrolysis of the saline water. We are developing new electrodes, we are developing new catalysts, but it is still in the realm of TRL 3 or 4. Will take some time for it to come to the real technology maturity level.
And sir, is there any particular, renewable energy resource which is being, targeted for massive green hydrogen production? Is it going to be solar? Do you think it's going to be wind, or do you think it's going to be hydro?
See, the major focus is going to be on the solar. Because as on today, if you see the hierarchy of the pricing of this, of course, hydro is cheapest, but next comes solar, and wind is still not as cheap as the solar. So, looking at the cost hierarchy, I must say that our largest focus will be on solar energy. But wherever wind is available in abundance, for example, in the southern region of our country, we have got significant amount of wind energy available, and they are able to get, I'm told now, in some of the states like Tamil Nadu and all, they are able to get some grid parity also. So probably wind will be used, but I think majority will be solar.
All right. And sir, is there any sort of opportunity for biomass-based hydrogen production as well?
Yes, yes. In fact, that is one route which I did not, unfortunately, I missed out in my remarks. There is one route which I think we should follow, because world over, there's a new process which is coming up. And I don't know how many of my participants who are here have read that. There's a company called Solena, which has come out with what is called greener than green hydrogen production using plasma enhanced gasification. And that can use MSW, biomass, and things like that. And it does not require the common kind of gas cleaning which is needed of the syngas to produce ultimately hydrogen. And they are claiming today that the cost of that hydrogen, even today, if they set up a plant of this type, but the plant size should be of the order of about 350 to 400 tons per day. So if you can do that, you can get hydrogen at about $2. So biomass is a major source for us, and we in India having such a huge quantity of biomass at different places, we should certainly focus on biohydrogen.
All right.
And in fact, that has been made part of the National Hydrogen Mission also, the biomass for production of hydrogen.
All right. And so how is India planning to improve utilization of electrolyzer to 24/7 versus 10 hours of renewables that we have now?
That is what I mentioned to you. Our biggest problem with the electrolyzers working on the solar energy is how do you make sure that it works on 24/7? And that means you will be using grid power for maintaining that, or you will have battery storage. If you put battery storage, then it adds to the cost significantly, because even today, when we take solar power with battery, as against 1.97 pure solar, with battery, it goes to about 4.5 rupees per unit. So you can see it becomes almost double. So that will ultimately have an impact on the cost of hydrogen. That is one. Second thing is, so it becomes imperative on our part to look at how do you decarbonize the grid. And for that purpose only we are talking of that the best way of decarbonization is thermal power plants fitted with as many CCUs as possible, number one. Otherwise, go for more and more nuclear energy into your grid. As a result, you will be able to reduce the CO2 emissions. Your grid will become greener. and the ultimate objective of reaching 90% of the decarbonized grid for getting
You are from DEN India,
parity of the
DEHL?
blue
Yeah.
hydrogen and green hydrogen.
Ma'am, actually, I wanted Mr. Manish Gupta's number. I think he's somehow given me a wrong number. He's given me your number. I think it's a series.
We can
Hi.
you
You
please
can just tell
put
me, I
yourself.
think if it's easy, I'll just type it down.
Sorry, sir, that was some issue.
So that becomes important that we decarbonize our grid using either nuclear or carbon capture and utilization on the thermal power plants. This is the only way we can meet this objective. Third one is some people are trying to do. I think there's a crosstalk going on. Some people are trying to do what is called increase the capacity of electrolyzers. Suppose you want to produce 1,000 tons per day or 1,000 tons per month. Then you set up electrolyzer capacity much larger. That is what ACME is doing today. Instead of 1,000, he is setting up an electrolyzer capacity for 1,500. So he produces the excess hydrogen, then he is creating a storage system for excess hydrogen. So when the electrolyzers are not working, for producing ammonia, he uses that stored hydrogen so that continuous supply of ammonia can be provided to a fertilizer plant. That is another method some of the people are following, but the cost effectiveness of that has to be looked at. I have not done those sums, but somebody will probably certainly do that, and probably they will be able to come out with much more accurate, analysis of that.
Sure, sir. So before we close this session, just to wrap up, can you give us 3 focus areas that's going to be NITI Aayog's and the government's priority in this space?
See, government priority is certainly to increase the demand of the hydrogen in the system, because government's basic premise is that if we can increase the demand of hydrogen in the industry sector, whether it is energy or it's industrial activity like fertilizers or steel or refineries, then only the supply side will come. So that is one. Number two, we are also, and for that there is a major requirement that we should have a policy by which the supply side investments can be subsidized, both in terms of investment subsidies and also PLI kind of an opinion, PLI kind of a scheme. You must have seen today itself, I think there's a PLI for the e-mobility, in which one thing that has been mentioned is hydrogen cells. That means probably electrolyzer is included there. If I've read it in the newspaper, but I think that's the kind of thing. So there is a policy which is likely to take shape, and after this national mission document is approved, I'm sure some of these measures will be put in place for accelerating the production of electrolyzers in the country, fuel cells in the country, and also setting up larger plants. Second part is a policy which certainly help for meeting the decarbonization strategy to incentivize carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So that will be second one. Third one, there will be significant investment as part of the mission on the research and development, both on storage and transportation and production, all three. Plus, the most important thing would be to work out, strategies for, making some of the new processes. For example, in India, if you really want to use hydrogen in the steel plant, how many steel industries will be ready to put up a pilot plant where instead of using pet coke and all that, they go for direct hydrogen as the reduction for steel? That means we have to invest even on those pilot plants and so that. So whether it is a fertilizer plant or a steel plant, in both cases there will be investment required, and that support also will be given on a sector to sector basis. So ensure that the ramping up takes place. Third part is the mobility sector, hydrogen will get in. And that is where already the scheme which has come by the government of India of blending hydrogen with CNG, you know that 18% hydrogen is going in CNG without any modification. That is also a good device that will also encourage the demand going up, and green hydrogen can find application there. So I think these all measures will ultimately take us to the green hydrogen. But the question is, what is the slope of this growth? Either slope is like a vertical or it is a ramping up over a period of time. And that's why I think the International Energy Agency has said that even in 2050, you will continue to use blue hydrogen and green hydrogen for the various applications in the ratio of 43 to 47.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Saraswat.